Hey everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Live Better Worldwide podcast. My name is Nicholas Demski from the Single Dad Nomad, and on this channel we talk about the information, income, inspiration you need to live better worldwide. So if you're interested in videos like that, please consider subscribing and clicking the little notification bell so you always see my videos. All right, let's get into it. Episode 1, Why You Should Leave the United States. And obviously, I'm an American, so I can express this viewpoint. Maybe some people will get upset with it, but that's probably just because they have their own insecurities about where they live, and if they, get fired up about what I have to say, it just means they haven't really thought about it too carefully. So we're going to dive into it here. One thing I want to say before I get going is that I love living in the United States. I have family here. There's a lot of great places to visit all over the country. Nice people all over the country, of course. Places to get outside in nature. Yellowstone National Park, the Grand Canyon, anywhere in the Midwest out in the countryside. It's just a beautiful country, so I do love the United States. That being said, it's not half of what it's made out to be, and I'm going to give you 11 reasons why you should leave the United States. Of course, you don't have to, but here's some reasons to consider. Number 1 is that you have a doctor or participate in healthcare. Now, of course you do, because you are a human being and you get sick, and everybody has to have healthcare at some point in their lives. Now, the Peter G. Peterson Foundation said that in 2018, the United States spent about $3.6 trillion on healthcare, which averages to about $11,000 per person. Relative to the size of the economy, the healthcare costs have increased over the past decades from 5% of GDP in 1960 to about 18% in 2018. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services project that by 2028, such costs will climb to $6.2 trillion, or about $18,000 per person, and that's going to represent 20% of GDP. Now, those numbers that they listed don't even include the impacts of COVID-19. And this basically just means that your healthcare costs keep rising, and they're going to keep rising. It's not going to stop. And you're paying more for your healthcare today than what you would have in the past in the United States, and you're paying more for healthcare today than anywhere else in the world. So if you have a doctor and you pay a ton of money into healthcare, you might want to leave the United States, considering that you can just find the same exact healthcare for a much lower cost outside of the USA. For example, you could move to Mexico as a resident and join their public health plan. You could move to Spain as a freelancer and get insurance there. Or you could move to Colombia as an investor and get the same quality healthcare in Bogota or Medellin that you would get in the United States for a fraction of the cost. The second reason you might want to leave the United States is that you hate politics. Now, I don't know how many people out there actually love politics, unless they enjoy arguing the intellectual battle that's involved. It's actually kind of fun. But when it comes down to it, American politics are just super annoying. This is what it's like. Do you like having to choose between eating sludge or putting out a cigarette in your eye? If you do, then you might enjoy the American presidential election. It's like we're having a conversation about food, and you and I want to discuss where to get the freshest fruit or where to get the best tasting restaurant meals in the world. And at the end of the conversation, our decisions come down to, would you like to eat that moldy ham sandwich, or would you like to eat those old cold French fries? That's the American political system. We have this array of food and buffet available to us in the political arena, but when it comes down to voting, you just get poisoned. Furthermore, if you're living in the United States and politics annoy you, you know that political signs and flags are everywhere and there's no escape from modern media. And now, thankfully to our newest president, the presidential election runs for 4 years instead of just 1 like it used to. So it's just a miserable, depressing slog through good old American bullshit. And you can get away from all this crap by just leaving the country, and then you don't have to deal with it anymore. It's not your problem. It's the problem of your crazy ex. That was creepy. So the third reason that you might want to move out of the United States, and this is why I usually take extended vacations out of the United States, I guess you could say. I've spent the last 6 years traveling, 2 years in Hong Kong, a year in Thailand, a lot of time in between Colombia, Mexico, Costa Rica. So I've been traveling quite a bit. And one of the big reasons is the cost of housing. So here's my examples for you. Would you rather pay $925 a month or $220 per month for rent? Now, here's the differences in them. That $925 will get you a rural housing in rural Michigan, 2-bedroom place, versus a rural housing 2-bedroom place in Colombia. It's only a difference of $700. So you can imagine that by saving $700 per month, that's $8,400 per year that you can save on housing costs just by changing your country. So if you feel like you're getting raked over the coals for the cost of your rent, you probably are. The fourth reason you might want to leave the United States is the cost of food. Yes, food is also really expensive in the United States, and you might not know it. For example, $4 at a local produce stand in Mexico is going to get you the same amount of fruit that you could get for $10 at a supermarket in the United States. Moreover, when I was in Colombia, I could get all kinds of food delivered for $10 or less. I could get a pizza and cheese sticks with caramel dipping sauce and a 2-liter of pop for about $10 delivered with tip. And I could also get for $6 about 18 wings and a big order of French fries delivered with tip for $6. What can you get in the United States delivered for $6 or $10? Maybe Jimmy John's. That's pretty much it. You certainly can't get 18 wings and a fat order of French fries, but you can in Colombia. So if you feel like you're getting torn apart on your food prices, consider leaving the United States. The fifth reason that you might want to leave the United States is that the holidays here are boring. Yes, I can hear you screaming about that. You love St. Patrick's Day. You love Halloween. You love Christmas. You love Thanksgiving. You love the 4th of July. Yeah, I hear you. Those are all fun. Those are great holidays to enjoy. But they're all only like a day long. And outside of that, you only get to enjoy them for about half the day most of the time because you got to go to work or something like that. Now let's compare those festivals to some of the festivals I've enjoyed in other countries. For example, Dia de los Muertos in Mexico. It lasts for like 3 or 4 days and it's just an all-out party nonstop, kind of like Halloween, except it's more about honoring their ancestors and having a good time than it is about just putting on a costume and getting drunk. Like I said, Halloween's fun. I could enjoy that. But Dia de los Muertos just gives you a lot more over a longer period of time. So their holidays are just better. And I have another example, and that's the Songkran Festival in Thailand. This is just way better than any holiday in the United States, hands down. The Songkran Festival in Thailand is about cleansing yourself. Every year they do a water cleansing of the spirit, of the soul of the people. And so the Songkran Festival is several days of everybody now just getting water guns and having a massive water fight all across the country. So, of course, the sentiment of cleansing yourself might not ring so true when there's a lot of tourists enjoying this festival, but the festival itself is a ton of fun. I had my daughter with me up in Thailand, and she just hopped up onto my shoulders with her squirt gun, and I had my squirt gun, and we're walking down the street and just shooting everyone we're getting shot at, and yeah, it's a ton of fun. It's a lot more fun than any holiday in the United States, for sure. The sixth reason you might want to consider leaving the United States is that you think the public transportation here blows. And you're absolutely right. It is terrible. The American Society of Civil Engineers gives the United States an infrastructure score of D+. That's terrible. That's third world country status. We just had a dam break in Michigan and rip apart half of our state. And it was right next to the place where Flint still has lead in its water. So our country's in absolute shambles. Our infrastructure is falling apart. And the infrastructure of the public transportation is no different. Let's consider this. Hong Kong has been building subways since 1972. The first systems created are now pretty old and outdated, but their newer lines are fresh, fast, and clean. I really like using public transport in Hong Kong. It's cheap. But their old, outdated rails are nicer than the best lines in New York City. I haven't been to Japan, but I've heard their systems push Hong Kong's to shame. So what does that say about our system in the United States? It's just in shambles. It's ugly. It's gross. And here's partly why. It's that in the late 19th century, the major mode of transport in American cities moved from animal-drawn streetcar lines to ones powered by electricity. Through the combination of the introduction of the car and the purchase and destruction of these lines by people like Ford, our cities just lost their public transportation modes, and we all started focusing on driving a car. Now, other countries still have solid transport all over the place, or at least they've figured something else out that works really well. For example, in Colombia, you wouldn't have to own a car living out in the countryside because there are a lot of people who do a colectivo taxi, which is basically like they might just drive up and down the road looking for people sitting at bus stops, and they'll ask you, hey, where are you going? You can hop in here. We'll drive you there for 50 cents, 67 cents, something like that. And they'll just pick up people along the way until the car is full. They'll drop everybody off, and they'll just keep doing it. They're not like official taxis in yellow cars, for example, but they're people who have figured out how to help their neighbors get their business done without having to have a car like we do in the United States. And of course, having a car in the United States means you have a car payment, you have insurance, you have to pay for gas. It just gets incredibly expensive if you consider that you could live in Barcelona and spend $50 on transport for the entire month, whereas you can't even get your gas for that in the United States. The next reason you might want to leave the United States, and this is a big one for me, is that you want to lose weight. Now, it's no secret that in the United States, 2/3 of adults are overweight or obese, and at least 1/3 of children are marked under the same category. Why is that? How is it that children can get overweight and obese when they have such solid metabolisms? Well, I have your answer for you. It's your diet, your environment, and your lifestyle. Those three things are going to destroy your health and make you fat. Now, I have always lost weight when I left the United States, and then I always put it back on when I come back. Why is that? It's not because I exercise anymore when I'm outside of the United States. That's not true. I pretty much keep the same exact exercise routine for my entire life. The only difference is the quality of food and the environment in which I live. Now, in the United States, we're all really stressed all the time. You're stressed at work, you're stressed with your kids, you're stressed as you're driving to work, you're stressed as you're driving home. And this individual stress manifests itself into a collective stress that really stresses out the entire society. Everybody's always arguing with each other about politics and shit. And so everybody's just sick, not only physically, but, also spiritually. So obviously your environment plays a big factor, but it's also the food. The food in the United States is just terrible compared to other places. For example, I'll use Thailand again because I love Thailand. When I'm living there, I can go and get a delicious vegetable pad thai that will fill me up for $1 or $2, sometimes less than $1. Now, this fresh, delicious vegetable and noodle and sauce meal is a far better thing to eat for you than a hamburger and French fries in the United States. But they're the same exact cost. In fact, the pad thai might even be less expensive. So this is what happens to the United States. People don't have a lot of money, so they're looking for their cheapest option of food. And so what do they go for? They go for the cheap options of food. And the cheap options of food in the United States is all f***ing terrible for you. It's loaded with disgusting and none of it is healthy. You're just not going to find a healthy meal for $2 in the United States. Not possible. Tell me, where is it possible? It's not possible. You're not going to do it. But living in Thailand, Cambodia, Mexico, Colombia, Spain, anywhere, you can find meals like this for just a couple dollars. So right away, anytime that I leave the United States, I always see a reduction in body fat. Just by the change in my diet and the change in my environment, I just feel much healthier from head to toe. The eighth reason you might want to leave the United States is that you crave better weather. Now, I was born in Wyoming and then I grew up in Michigan, so I didn't realize that having a winter was not mandatory. I discovered after living in Costa Rica for a couple months during my study abroad that winter is very much isolated to certain locations. I know that's something that seems very obvious, but when you grow up with 6 months of winter, it doesn't really dawn on you that those 6 months of winter is not something you have to struggle through every year. So a note to Michiganders like me, Canadians, Englishmen, anyone who lives in the Northeast or in Montana or anything like that where you get a ton of snow every year, you can live somewhere else for cheaper with much better weather. You don't have to suffer winter. I used to love winter. I would snowboard, skate, ski, play in the snow, play football in the snow as a kid and stuff like that. But now that I'm an adult, I don't care about the cold anymore, and I'm not excited by snow. I want warmth. Now, don't get me wrong, I could definitely go to like Aspen and do some skiing or something like that. But like for a week or 2 weeks, I don't want to live in freezing cold, terrible weather for 6 months of a year. It's terrible. So if you want to get better weather, get out of the United States. The 9th reason that you might want to leave the United States is that you want to get laid. You're not getting laid here in the United States. Everybody's gross. You don't even want to lay anybody anyway. I mean, I hop on Tinder here, and everyone who's 19 looks like they're 29, and everyone who's 29 looks like they're 45. It's just not the best place to try and get your bone down. Moreover, you're just going to look better when you leave the United States. Not just physically, like I already mentioned, but because you're a foreigner and you're from another country, you automatically bump up 1 or 2 points. So if you're like a 7 or an 8, you might jump up to like a 9 or a 10 just by where you're from and how you talk and how you dress. So if you want to go get laid somewhere else, just hop on Tinder, travel around the world. Girls are going to love you, especially compared to here in the United States. It's crazy, if I'm in Hong Kong or Thailand or Colombia or something, I'm getting right swipes all day long, super likes, just can match with whoever. I'm going to get back here in the United States and I can't match with one girl out of 1,000. Now, I don't know if that's my own personal failings or if, they're probably my own personal failings, but I'm still blaming you, ladies. And I'm still going to go to other countries to get laid. Those girls are hotter anyway. So if you're tired of everyone your age looking like they're 15 years older than you, step your boink up by leaving the United States. The 10th reason you might want to leave the United States is that you are perpetually stressed with life, and I totally understand this. When I graduated from college, I instantly went into teaching and learned what it was like to live in the rat race. And I can tell you from experience that the rat race mentality is contagious and toxic. It's taught in schools, it's taught in movies, it's taught in TV and music, and it will suck you in and it will ruin your life and your children's lives because you'll end up teaching them the same lifestyle. So what I want to express to you is that there are different ways to live outside of the United States. You don't have to always be stressing and struggling and trying to earn every dollar you can. For example, you would think of a place like Spain, still highly industrial, still a lot of business there, people doing good things, but they have this saying, mañana, mañana. It means tomorrow, tomorrow. Not everything has to be done today. We don't have to stress ourselves so hard today that we give up our enjoyment of the moment. So, mañana, mañana. In Costa Rica, they might say pura vida. It means the good life, pure life, technically. But it translates to anything. You can say hello, pura vida. You can say goodbye, pura vida. You can say how are you, pura vida. You can say how was the food, pura vida. How was the movie, pura vida. How are you feeling today, pura vida. They always say that in Costa Rica because they have this internalized feeling of well-being, and they're not stressed with their lives most of the time. And I understand people live in different situations and they have, different obligations and problems that they have to deal with. But as a whole, the country is not as stressed out as the United States. And that's because they have a philosophy of a stress-free life. Whereas in the United States, I think it's our philosophy to stress people out. That's all we do. That's our entire education system is just a perpetual stressing environment. And it's no wonder everyone is so out of shape, sad, not happy about living here, on antidepressants. I feel bad for a lot of Americans because I sometimes think that they've tricked themselves into believing that the United States is the one and only and the best place to live. It's just not true, And so if you want your stress levels to come down, I consider offering you the advice that you leave the United States. The final and last reason that you should leave the United States is that you think you'll never die, so you're never going to leave. What do I mean by that? I mean, you have to do it now. You can't listen to the concerns of others. You're going to spend your whole life thinking that you're just going to live forever and you're always going to have all this time, and everyone's going to be struggling and worrying about you and not wanting you to go explore and live your life because you have obligations to fulfill and you need to do X, Y, and Z, and if you don't do that, then you're not doing the right thing. Okay, well, you just keep doing that. And then when you're 94 and you're on your deathbed, you're going to look back and say to yourself, why was I listening to the concerns of all these other people when all I wanted to do was make myself happy and get out of the United States? Tired of living in this environment, tired of listening to these politics, tired of feeling worried about all the problems that the United States has. Just get out. Do what you want to do. You don't have to listen to anyone else, okay? You don't even have to listen to me. I don't care what you do. I'm just here to give you the information that you can live better outside the United States. You don't have to stick there full time. Obviously, I'm in the States right now. I'm back here right now because the quarantine in Colombia was hyper fascist and super annoying. So I came back to the US. I love living in Colombia, but not when they're going to do shit like that. So I came back to the United States. Now, this is my best option right now. It's not really easy to be traveling and moving around during border closings and quarantines. So I'm back home. It doesn't bother me. I like the United States. I enjoy living here. I'm happy to see my family and stuff like that. But I don't ignore the problems of the United States. And I just want to articulate to everyone out there that you can do better if you just leave the United States. It's not that hard. So one of the things that I know that somebody might bring up right now is that they'll talk about COVID. Can I really leave right now with this pandemic? And the answer to that is, it's scary. No one wants to get sick. No one wants to die. I have asthma. I don't want to catch a disease that attacks my lungs. Like, that would be fucking terrible for me, I've had pneumonia. I've had asthma attacks. I've had allergic reactions to things that have already almost killed me. It sucks. I don't want to do that again. But at the same time, how long can one wait for the end of the pandemic? Maybe it'll be 2 years. Maybe it'll be 3 years. Maybe they'll never develop a vaccine. You just don't know. There's no telling what's going to happen in the scientific community. We don't know how well they're going to be able to develop effective treatments for this. So, COVID is scary, yes. But the United States, for example, has the most cases and the most deaths by far. That's not necessarily what scares me. What scares me is that people are going to live in fear for the rest of their life. What if they never come up with a vaccine? Are you going to wait around for 20 years, not hugging your children, not saying hi to your friends, not giving high fives to people that you like spending time with? That's what you're going to do for the next 20, 30 years. And I get it. Everyone has their own personal opinion and their choices to make. You could isolate yourself in a bubble if you want to, or you could go out and join the protest and put yourself in the middle of a place where you're likely going to get coughed on by someone with the infection. But, this is the problem, is that everyone thinks they're going to live forever. You could get COVID tomorrow. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. You could just die like that and your life is going to be over. And then what are you going to do? Sit there and, blame the disease or blame the bus that you didn't go enjoy your life, that you didn't get out of the United States when you had the chance to? Listen, I know COVID is scary, and I don't want to encourage anybody to do something that they wouldn't feel comfortable doing, and I don't want anyone to put themselves in a dangerous situation. What I know else is also scary? It's seeing your life flash before your eyes as a bus is moments from smashing your face as you cross the street to go to a job you hate. And in that flash, you wonder how life could have turned out differently if only you'd followed your heart instead of your fear. If you're thinking about moving abroad, I have 2 videos that I want you to watch. This one right here is about how to move to Mexico on a budget, and this one down here is about how to move to Thailand on a budget. Don't forget to subscribe and click to turn on all the notifications before you leave, and I'll see you next time. Peace.